In the dusty heart of the Wild West, where the sun scorched the earth like an unrelenting forge and the wind whispered secrets through the canyons, lived a man named Harlan Wade. Harlan was the richest rancher in all of Montana Territory, his sprawling estate a testament to ruthless ambition and a fortune built on cattle drives that stretched from Texas to the Canadian border. He was a towering figure with a mustache as thick as his wallet, as sharp as a gambler's blade, and a reputation for winning every bet he ever made. But on this fateful evening in 1875, as the saloon in the sleepy town of Bitter Creek buzzed with the clamor of cowboys and outlaws, Harlan found himself drawn into a wager that would shatter his world. "But you can't charm that widow Eliza over there into your bed by midnight," slurred his rival, a sly old baron named Cyrus Black, slapping a $1,000 gold certificate on the bar. The crowd erupted in laughter, but Harlan, ever the showman, flashed a grin that hid the emptiness in his soul. Little did he know, this bet would not end in triumph, but in a revelation that would freeze him to his core and redefine the man he thought he was. Harlan had always been a lone wolf, orphaned young and raised by the harsh lessons of the frontier. He believed in self-reliance above all, that kindness was a weakness exploited by the weak, and that true power came from taking what you wanted without apology. The widow Eliza Thorne was a mystery to the town, a delicate woman in her mid-30s with raven hair tied in a simple bun, eyes like storm clouds over the prairie, and a quiet strength that commanded respect without a word. She'd arrived 2 years prior after her husband, a prospector, perished in a mining collapse, leaving her to tend a modest homestead alone. Rumors swirled. She was reclusive, devout, and turned away every suitor with polite but firm resolve. Harlan sauntered over, his boots echoing on the wooden floor, tipping his head with that practiced charm. "Evening, ma'am. Name is Harlan Wade. Mind if I buy you a drink? Looks like you could use some company in this god-forsaken place." Eliza glanced up from her sewing, her needle pausing mid-stitch. There was no flirtation in her gaze, only a weary curiosity. "Company's fine, Mr. Wade, but I don't drink. What did you do?" As the night wore on, Harlan spun his tales of conquests, vast herds stampeding across the plains, deals struck in smoke-filled rooms, fortunes won and lost at poker tables from Dodge City to San Francisco. He expected her to swoon, as women often did, dazzled by his wealth and bravado. But Eliza listened quietly, her responses measured and thoughtful. She spoke of simpler things, the wildflowers that bloomed after spring rains, the way the stars seemed closer out here, the small acts of neighborly help that kept her going after her loss. Harlan, fueled by the bet and a few whiskeys, pressed on, his words turning bolder. "A woman like you shouldn't be alone, Eliza. Life is too short in these parts. Come with me tonight, let me show you what a real man's touch feels like." The saloon hushed, eyes darting their way. To everyone's shock, including Harlan's, Eliza didn't slap him or storm out. Instead, she set down her sewing, met his eyes steadily, and said, "All right, Mr. Wade. But on one condition, you listen to my story first." "I love it." They left the saloon together, the crowd murmuring in disbelief as Harlan escorted her to his lavish carriage waiting outside. The ride to his ranch was silent at first, the moon casting silver shadows over the rolling hills dotted with grazing cattle. Harlan's mind raced with anticipation, the bet's victory already tasting sweet. But as they arrived at his opulent home, a grand log mansion with crystal chandeliers imported from New York and walls lined with trophy heads, Eliza's demeanor shifted. She accepted his invitation inside, but instead of heading to the bedroom, she asked to sit by the roaring fireplace. "Your story, then," Harlan said, pouring himself a brandy, his voice laced with impatience. Eliza nodded, her hands folding in her lap like a prayer. "My husband, Jacob, wasn't just a miner. He was a dreamer, always talking about striking it rich not for gold, but to build something lasting, a school for the town's children, a place where orphans like you once were could learn and grow." Harlan froze for a split second at the mention of orphans, but shook it off. How could she know about his past? He hadn't shared that with anyone. Eliza continued, her voice soft yet steady, weaving a tale that unraveled Harlan's defenses thread by thread. Jacob had been kind to a fault, helping strangers on the trail, sharing their last meal with starving travelers, even forgiving debts from fellow prospectors who couldn't pay. He believed in the power of humanity, she said, that one act of selflessness could ripple out like a stone in a pond, changing lives forever. But the mine collapse wasn't an accident, it was sabotaged by greedy rivals who wanted Jacob's claim. In his final moments, trapped under rubble, he'd whispered to a rescued comrade about a hidden vein of gold he'd discovered, not for himself, but to fund his dreams. The comrade, sworn to secrecy, had passed the map to Eliza on his deathbed. "I've kept it hidden," she confessed, pulling a worn parchment from her bodice. "Not for wealth, but to honor Jacob's wish. But tonight, Harlan, I see something in you, a loneliness that mirrors my own. You're betting on fleeting pleasures, but what if there's more?" Harlan's hand trembled on his glass. The bet felt trivial now, a childish game in the face of her quiet revelation. He had expected conquest, perhaps a night of passion to boast about, but instead, she laid bare his soul. "How do you know about me being an orphan?" he demanded, his voice cracking for the first time in years. Eliza's eyes softened. "Jacob helped a boy once, on the Oregon Trail. A scrappy lad named Harlan, left behind after his parents died of fever. Jacob shared his food, taught him to ride, and pointed him toward a ranch where he could work. He never forgot you, and neither did I," from his stories. Harlan froze, the room spinning. Memories flooded back, the starvation, the fear, and the stranger, Jacob, who had saved him with a simple meal and words of encouragement. That act of kindness had set Harlan on his path to success, yet he'd buried it deep, convinced it was his own grit alone that built his empire. Tears swelled in his eyes, unbidden and unfamiliar. He forgot. Or tried to. Dogged kindness made fools of men. The emotional climax built like a gathering storm. Harlan set down his drink, the bet forgotten, and knelt before her. "Eliza, I've lived wrong. Chasing gold and glory, stepping on folks to get ahead. But you've reminded me of the men who gave me a chance when no one else would." In that moment, compassion surged through him like a river breaking a dam. He took the map from her hands, not to claim the gold, but to fulfill Jacob's dream. "We'll build that school together. Not just for the kids, but for every soul in Bitter Creek who needs a hand up. My fortune, it's yours to use for good." Eliza's face lit with a smile that outshone the firelight, her hand resting on his shoulder. It was an act of generosity born from profound realization, transforming the rich rancher from a taker to a giver. As dawn broke over the ranch, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Harlan and Eliza stood on the porch, watching the world awaken. The bet that had brought them together faded into irrelevance, replaced by a bond forged in vulnerability and hope. Harlan disbanded his cutthroat business practices, redirecting his wealth to community wells, medical outposts, and yes, at school, which became a beacon for the frontier's forgotten children. Years later, as an old man surrounded by grandchildren and a loving wife in Eliza, Harlan would tell the story not of conquests, but of the night a widow's revelation thawed his frozen heart. In the Wild West, where survival often bred hardness, their tale reminded all that kindness is the true gold, selflessness the mightiest weapon, and the power of humanity can turn even the most jaded soul toward the light. And in towns across America, from the bustling streets of New York to the quiet farms of the Midwest, people whispered of the rich rancher who learned that real wealth lies not in what you take, but in what you give, leaving hearts inspired and hopeful for a better tomorrow.